हेलो दोस्तों, बिगनर्स पॉइंट में आपका स्वागत है। और अभी हम कर रहे हैं सोशल साइंस। ठीक है, सिक्स क्लास की 3 चैप्टर हो चुके हैं। ये है फोर्थ चैप्टर, टाइमलाइन एंड सोर्सेज ऑफ हिस्ट्री। E.H. Carr, history is an unending dialogue between the present and the past, between the society of today and the society of yesterday. We can fully understand the present only in the light of the past. ये क्या है? नेशनल म्यूजियम। What is the earliest memory you can recollect? Do you remember how old you were at the time? Those memories together are a part of your past, maybe going 5 or 6 years back. How do you think understanding the past will help us understand the present world? History, the study of the human past. You will discover in science that the earth has a very, very long history, of which we humans occupy only a tiny part, the most recent one. First cell, earth, atmospheric oxygen। फिर आ जाते हैं बैक्टीरिया, स्पंज एंड फंगी, कोरल्स, इंसेक्ट, एम्फीबियंस, फिश, वर्टिब्रेट्स। फिर आ जाते हैं ये शार्क्स, रेप्टाइल्स, डायनासोर्स, बर्ड्स, मैमल्स, फ्लावर्स, बीज, प्राइमेट्स, फायर, होमोसेपियंस और राइटिंग्स। Many people study the Many people study the history of the earth. Some of them are trained to uncover the secrets left beneath the earth's surface and help us learn about its past and also our past. Geologist, paleontologist, anthropologist, archaeologist overserve these four pictures and the activities involved from the top left. Geologists study the physical features of the earth like the soil, stones, hills, mountains, rivers, sea, oceans, other such parts of the earth. Paleontologists study the remains of plants, animals, and humans from millions of years ago in the form of fossils. Anthropologists study human society and cultures from the oldest times to the present. Archaeologists study the past by digging up remains that people, plants, and animals left behind, to us, such as tools, pots, beads, figurines, toys, bones, and teeth of animals and humans, burned grains, parts of house or bricks, among other. How is the time measured in history? Era, a distinct period of time. Each society and culture has had its own way of measuring time. Major events such as the birth of an important person or the start of a ruler's reign, have often marked the beginnings of the new era. At present, the Georgian calendar is commonly used worldwide side by side. Hindu, Muslim, Jewish, Chinese, and other calendars are also used for calculating the dates of festivals and other auspicious events. In the West, the conventional year for Jesus Christ's birth has generally been taken to be the starting point for this calendar. Years are counted forward from this point and used to be marked with AD, an abbreviation for a Latin phrase that refers to the years after Jesus' birth. However, this is now called the Common Era or CE across the world. For example, 1947, the year India gained independence, can be written as 1947 AD, sometimes AD 1947 or 1947 CE. Similarly, the years before the conventional date for the birth of Jesus are counted backward, are used to be marked with BC or before Christ. They are now called before Common Era or BCE. For example, 560 BCE is an approximate year of birth of Gautam Buddha. ये 40,000 साल पहले फर्स्ट एग्जाम्पल ऑफ रॉक आर्ट इन द वर्ल्ड. We'll meet in chapter 7. Can you calculate how many years ago that was? ये इसमें इधर चलने BC और 40,000 साल पहले, फिर आइस एज 14,000 साल पहले, उसके बाद 12,000 साल पहले, एंड ऑफ लास्ट स्टेज आइस एज, फर्स्ट सेटलमेंट एंड बिगिनिंग ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर 8,000 साल, बिगिनिंग ऑफ कॉपर मेटलर्जी 4,000, बर्थ ऑफ बुद्धा यहाँ पे बीच में ये अशोका चक्र है 2,000 सी, वी आर हियर यहाँ पे हैं, ठीक है। बर्थ ऑफ जीसस, बुद्ध का पहले हुआ, जीसस का बाद में हुआ। और यहाँ पे 6,000 साल पहले पोएट्री टेक्नोलॉजी इन इंडियन सब कॉन्टिनेंट, द वर्ल्ड्स फर्स्ट सिटीज इन मेसोपोटामिया, इंडस सरावस्ती सिविलाइजेशन यहाँ पे थी। अ टाइमलाइन is a convenient tool to mark such events, as it shows a sequence of dates and events covering any particular period. It runs from the beginning of humanity to the present, with a few important landmarks. Note that the dotted portion marks a skipped period, otherwise, this timeline would have to be almost 3 meter long. Birth of Buddha 560 BCE पास्ट में, जीसस बर्थ फिर 2000 में, आज ये खड़े हैं, फ्यूचर आगे होगा। A timeline also helps in understanding the order in which historical events take place. For example, even without looking at dates, you can now see that the birth of Buddha occurs before that of Jesus. Along with a year and decade, a period of 10 years, we often use other terms of understand longer duration of times. Two of these are quite commonly used when learning about history. Century, it is any period of 100 years. In history, specific centuries are counted every 100 years starting from the years 1 CE. For instance, we are currently in the 21st century, which runs from 2001 to 2100. The centuries BCE are calculated begins from the year 1 BCE and keep going back in time. For example, the 3rd century BCE would include the years 300 BCE to 201 BCE. Millennium, it is any period of 1000 years. In history, specific centuries are counted every 1000 years from the year 1 CE. For instance, we are currently in the 3rd millennium CE, which began in 2001 CE and will go up to 3000 CE. As with centuries, millenniums BCE are also calculated, beginnings from 1 BCE and go backwards. So the first millennium BCE would include the years 1 BCE to 1000 BCE. In the timeline given on pages 60 to 63, can you mark the beginning of the 8th millennium BCE? Do you know how calendars have been traditionally made in India? Many Indian calendars rely on the positions of the sun and the moon to define the months of the year. A panchang is a book of tables which list the days of each month along with related astronomical data. For instance, it precisely predicts events like solar and lunar eclipses, times for sunrise and sunset, etc. Panchangs, still widely used in India, often also give weather predictions for the year, dates and timings of festivals, and more. Source of history: a place, person, text, or an object from which we gather information about some past event or period. What are the source of history? ये सोर्स हैं, ग्रैंड पेरेंट वगैरह है सोर्स, और क्या है? हाउ डिड यू फाइंड डिटेल्स अबाउट योर फैमिलीज पास्ट? डिड यू रिलाई ऑन थिंग्स लाइक फोटोग्राफ्स, डायरीज, ID कार्ड्स और memories from your parents and relatives? Every object or structure tells a story and is like a piece in a jigsaw puzzle. The objects that you see around your house convey something of the history of your family. Similarly, we can put together historical events through a variety of sources, but keep in mind that in case of history, quite a few pieces of the puzzle may remain missing. Observe the figure at the bottom of the page. It brings together the main source of history. You do not need to. Inscription, manuscripts, copper plates, coins, ये पूरी सोर्स ऑफ हिस्ट्री है। ओरल सोर्सेज, जीनोलॉजिकल, फ्लोक्लेयर, इंडियन लिटरेचर, वेदास, इतिहास, पोएम्स एंड प्लेज, हिस्टोरिकल टेक्स्ट, कलेक्शन ऑफ स्टोरीज, साइंटिफिक एंड टेक्नोलॉजिकल टेक्स्ट, फॉरेन अकाउंट्स, ट्रेवलर्स, हिस्टोरिकल क्रॉनिकल्स, आर्टिस्टिक सोर्स, पेंटिंग्स, स्कल्पचर, पैनल्स, एविक्शन से जो निकला है, ह्यूमन, एनिमल एंड प्लांट रिमेन्स, टूल्स एंड वेपन्स, फिगरीज एंड ornaments, poetry and toys, habitations and burials, structures, monuments on mounds. Remember them all. We will use some of them as we go along. When historians study, say, a king or queen of 1500 years ago, an ancient monument, a war, or some items of trade, they take great care to gather information from as many sources as they can find and consult. Sometimes the sources confirm each other, the jigsaw piece match. At other times, sources may give contradictory information, the jigsaw piece don't match, in which case they need to decide which source they can trust more. That is how they try to recreate the history of the period they are studying. Who contributes to all these sources of history? Historians themselves, but also archaeologists, epigraphists who study ancient inscription, anthropologists who study human society and their cultures, experts in literature and languages, and some more. In addition, in the last 50 years or so, scientific studies have been contributing more and more to the reconstruction of the past. For example, studies of ancient climates, chemical studies of excavated materials, and studies of the genetics of ancient people have provided fresh insights which supplement the more useful sources. And when historians study recent history, which usually means that the last 2 or 3 centuries, another source is newspapers for the last few decades, electronic media, television, the internet, etc., can also be consulted. The beginnings of human history. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, have walked the planet for about 3, 3 lakh years. This appears to be a very long time, yet it is only a tiny fraction of the Earth's history. Let us have a quick look at our early history. Early humans faced many challenges from nature and lived in bands or groups to help each other. They were constantly seeking shelter and food, and were mainly hunters and gatherers. This means that they relied on hunting and collecting edible plants and fruits for their survival. Our early ancestors also had certain beliefs about the natural elements and possibly also some notion of afterlife. These groups lived in temporary camps, rock shelters or caves, and communicated with each other using languages that are now lost. They used fire and started making objects that made their lives easier, like improved stone axes and blades, arrowheads, and other tools. Aspects of their life are visible in rock paintings found in hundreds of caves all over the world. Some of those paintings depict simple figures or a few symbols. Others are more detailed and represent scenes with animals or humans. In time, these early humans learned to make simple ornaments such as stone or shell beads, pendants made of animal teeth, and sometimes exchanged them with other groups. The first crops. Over long ages, the Earth's climate has gone through many changes. At certain times, it was very cold and much of the Earth was covered with ice. This is called an ice age. As you will learn in greater detail in science later, when the climate warmed up, this ice partly melted and the resulting water swelled the existing rivers and eventually drained into the oceans. The last ice age lasted from over 10 1 lakh years ago to around 12,000 years ago. Afterwards, living conditions improved for humans in many parts of the world. They started settling down and cultivating cereals and grains. They also domesticated animals such as cattle, goats, etc. With more foods available, these communities grew in size and number and often settled down near rivers. This was not only because of the availability of water, but also because the soil would be more fertile here. It made the process of growing crops easier. both in the earlier picture of a rock shelter and in this one. Men and women are given certain roles. खाना बना रहे हैं, ये मार के खा रहे हैं, वो मार के ला रहे हैं, ये पका रहे हैं. While they may appear to be natural, they are not necessarily accurate and do not cover all situations. For instance, in a rock shelter, women may have helped prepare colors for painting the rock or may have done some of the painting in both scenes. Men have men may have done some of the cooking or may have helped take care of children. Keeping in mind that we have only limited information, think about such roles and situations and discuss in class. As communities grew, so did their social complexity. Leaders or chieftains were responsible for the well being of the people, and everyone collectively worked towards the community's welfare. For example, there was no sense of individual ownership, the lands were collectively sowed and harvested. As time went by, hamlets grew into sizable villages that exchanged goods, mostly food, clothing, and tools. Slowly, networks of communication and exchange were established among those villages, and some of them grew into small towns. New technologies appeared, for example, pottery for making pots and other clay objects, and the use of metal, copper first, iron later, which helped make durable tools, objects of daily use, and ornaments. We will see in chapter 6 how this stage prepared for the emergence of what is called civilization. For now, it is important to remember that this early progress of humanity had to face many challenges. At some critical times, humanity could have almost disappeared as some earlier species did. We will never know those early humans to whose courage and persistence we owe our existence today. Before we move on, we have explored some ways to learn more about our past. The concept of a timeline helps us understand the sequence of historical events at different times. There are different ways of measuring times, years, decades, centuries, and millenniums. Sources of history are many. They help us reconstruct and interpret historical events. We have also had a brief look into the lives of early humans and how human societies grew more complex in टाइम. उसके बाद ये आज सब आ जाता है क्वेश्चंस जो हमारे किसी काम की नहीं और चैप्टर हो जाता है समाप्त. अब मिलेंगे अगले चैप्टर में.